Hi, I'm Rita. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, Life Worth Reading. Before we get started with today's video, I just want to wish you a very happy new year. I hope that 2024 is everything that you could ask for and more. I hope that it's a year filled with amazing books, amazing memories, and I just wish all of you the best this year. But without further ado, let's reflect on 2023 and talk about my favorite and the worst books of that year. Basically, I've been mentioning this a lot in my last couple of videos, but 2023 was just a very meh reading year for me, which means that I actually don't have a lot of favorites and I don't have a lot of bad books per se. I just have a lot of middle of the road books. So instead of making two videos separately and just, I don't know, trying to talk about my worst books of the year in one and my favorites in the other, I just thought that I would mix them together and we will talk about both of the categories in the same video. I'm going to start on a more negative note so we can actually get past that to the best books that I read in 2023. And I'm going to talk to you about a couple of books that I really didn't enjoy or that I DNF'd. I DNF'd a few books this year, but some of them were just because it wasn't the right timing. I wasn't really in the mood for them, and others I DNF'd because I did not like them or I was not enjoying them. So we're going to talk about those DNFs and the ones that I actually finished that I gave a low rating to. So first, about my DNFs, the first book that I DNF'd in 2023 was actually my first read of the year, so it's like about a year ago now, and that is The Echo Chamber by John Boyne. I don't want to give this book a lot of attention because the reason I DNF'd it is because it is wildly transphobic. It's about this wealthy family and their connection with social media, and it's like a satire of that whole thing of like how wealthy people use social media for their own advantages. I was having fun until it got just like wildly transphobic because the head of the family makes a very transphobic tweet and is cancelled for it, but he's trying to save himself. And then it got worse because I actually discovered that John Boyne, the author, is quite transphobic as well. He has a very transphobic book out, and so I just stopped reading it right there and then. And yeah, that was unfortunately my first read of the year, which I think cursed my reading year maybe, but yeah, I DNF'd that one. Don't read it, it's really not worth your time. Then I DNF'd Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. This one hurt because I had this book on my physical TBR. I have unhauled it since then, and I had such high expectations for it. It's about this young girl that is studying to become this like librarian of sorts in this fantastical world where the books talk and the books have souls, and I can't really remember what the name of the profession was, but it's like kind of like this library. So it's all about books, it's about magic, and I was expecting to love it so much, but I didn't. It was such a bore to get through, and I DNF'd it like 500 pages in or something ridiculous like that. I couldn't take it anymore. I could not care less. The romance was not romancing for me. I did not really like our main character a lot. It didn't work for me. It's fine, but yeah, that was a disappointing DNF because I really was expecting to like that book. Then we have Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Malors. I picked this book up from my library, thank God. I wanted to try it. I did not know where this was going to go. I didn't have neither high expectations or low expectations for it. I just wanted to try it out. It's about this couple that meet in New York on New Year's Eve, and she's like this younger girl and he's an older man. And supposedly they hit it off and it's about their marriage. I DNF'd it 40 pages in. I could not carry on any longer. I just thought, like, this is so bad to say, but I just thought it was so cringe. Like, their conversations, secondhand embarrassment. They were trying to be so deep and it just didn't really work for me. I didn't feel invested in their relationship. I didn't care where their marriage went. And I just wasn't really feeling their chemistry. And yeah, I just thought that their like conversations and it didn't work for me personally. So that's another book that I DNF'd very early on. And the last DNF that I'm going to talk to you about is actually The Death of Jane Lawrence by Caitlin Starling, which is another book on my physical TBR that I haven't hauled since then. It's a bummer because there are so many books that I tried to read off my physical TBR this last year that just didn't work for me. And it was so upsetting because I really thought that the books that I had on my physical TBRs were books that were going to work for me, that I was going to enjoy. That's why I purchased them. But The Death of Jane Lawrence just did not work for me at all. It was very, very slow to get through. Also a pain. It's about this young woman called Jane Lawrence, and she has this arranged marriage with this doctor. No, he's Dr. Lawrence. She becomes Jane Lawrence. I don't remember her first, like her before name. But she marries this doctor, like a marriage of convenience, and he tells her, okay, we'll get married, but you can promise me that you'll never go to my manor at night. And she's like, okay. And then she does, and she discovers, like, supposedly this horrible truth. It's supposed to be this gothic story, romance. It was just not for me at all. I thought it was such a boring book, which I really do hate to say, but I thought it was really, really boring. And I just didn't care about anything. It was just such a slog to get through. So I didn't have to, like, halfway through. I don't regret it, but yeah, that was a sad DNF for me. And the only two books that I'm going to talk about that are books that I finished that I gave 2 stars to. The first one is The Watchmaker of Filigree Street by Natasha Pulley. This is also a book that I picked up from my library. I was just trying it out. It's about this... It's an historical fiction about... I no longer remember, but it's about Japan, and there's a watchmaker there. And there's a man that goes there, and it's like about time travel, and it has a secret. But again, the writing was so unbelievably boring. It took me so long to get through. I just wanted to finish it, and I just did not enjoy it in the slightest. It was just so strenuous to read. It was difficult to read. It was a pain to get through. So that's the book that I finished. I don't know how I finished that book, but I ended up giving it 2 stars. So really not for me. And the next one that I'm going to talk about, this might be very controversial. This, I didn't even remember that I read this last year, but I want to talk about You Made a Fool of That With Your Beauty by Akwaeke Emezi. I know this is not very controversial. There are a lot of people that love Akwaeke Emezi and that don't love this book. I am one of those people, but this book was just... no. It was just no. This is a romance book about our main character, whose name I don't remember. I've read this a long time ago. And her boyfriend unfortunately dies in a really, like, tragic car accident, and she hasn't been with anyone since. And then she meets this guy, and they kind of hit it off. But then he flies her to his island because he's like this very privileged man. And she kind of falls in love with his dad. And it's not that I specifically mind a forbidden romance. I don't love romance at all, but it's not that I particularly mind that. It's just that the chemistry between them, I did not feel at all. Like, it just felt like very a father and daughter in, like, a really weird way that I didn't care about. And just the lying and the using, it was not for me. I love the writing of Akwaeke Emezi, I really do, but this book just... I didn't like the chemistry. The main character was a painter, which was really cool. There was a lot of talk about art. The visual part of it was really nice, like the island, the descriptions, but the main relationship, the thing that we're supposed to be rooting for, just no. So I ended up giving this book 2 stars. I listened to the audiobook, and I did not like it. But I still want to read other Akwaeke Emezi books because, yeah, just the idea of it is... no. Moving on to my favorite books of 2023. This will be a much more exciting list, and I have a couple of books that I really, really liked this year. They're not all exactly 5 stars. Sometimes I pick books that were at the time 4 stars, but that just stuck with me the most throughout the year. That's how I like to pick my favorites. I don't go strictly on rating alone. I go with the feel of it. Like, if I still think about it all the time, or if it's a very memorable experience for me, it'll probably end up in my favorites of the year. With that being said, let's start probably at my favorites of the year, like collectively, and that is Nevermoor, The Trials of Morgan Crow, and Wondersmith, The Calling of Morgan Crow. Now, both of these books, obsessed, like absolutely obsessed. At the time I read them in January, I gave them 4 stars. Like, who was I kidding? These are favorites. Like, I need to change my rating. But I picked up Nevermoor, The Trials of Morgan Crow from the library because I just wasn't sure if I would like middle grade. I have never read middle grade since I was in the time of reading middle grade, and so I always thought that it wouldn't be for me. But lo and behold, the grip these books have on me. Nevermoor is about Morgan Crow, who is believed to be like this cursed child. She is believed to bring bad luck anywhere she goes. Bad things happen all around her. And she is cursed to pass away on the night that she turns 11. And so when that day comes, instead of dying, she's actually picked up by this man, Jupiter, I think that's it. Jupiter North picks her up and brings her to this like magical world where she goes to school, and she's like, what is happening? I don't know my powers, because everyone has like really specific powers, and there are trials to get into the school. And so there's just so much going on. I love this little world. Like, I picked these books up immediately. I bought them for myself. I have Holopox. It has been staring at me ever since I bought it like in the summertime, but actually the fourth book was supposed to come out last year and it didn't, which was so upsetting to me. And it'll only come out in October of this year. That's why I've been postponing like reading Holopox, because I'm just so upset that the book didn't come out last year. But honestly, I thought about these books all year. I want to reread them right now. I think that I will reread them. Like, I just thought about them all the time. I love this little world. I love the side characters. I just love the cozy feelings. And this book was so good. Like, this sequel was incredible. Where it went, the twists and the turns, obsessed. And I am so excited to read Holopox and to continue on with the series, because I feel like it'll just keep getting better and better. And I love this little world, and I love Morgan Crow so much, and I need to reread them immediately. And this was definitely like the highlight of my reading year. These books made me so happy. I can't. Like, these books made me so happy. This was the highlight of 2023, honestly. Moving on, we have Bliss Montage by Ling Ma. I absolutely loved this book so much. This is an audiobook that I listened to at the start of the year. Ling Ma is the author of Severance, which I haven't read yet. And this is like short stories about, I don't know if I could put like a theme on it. I guess Asian American experience, maybe like heritage themes, family, identity. If I had to put a theme to it, because the themes are so varied, like, it is definitely a wild collection of short stories, but I love short story collections, and this one was just great to listen on audiobook. My favorite story of this is G. I thought about that story a lot this year, and overall the collection was a 4-star, not a 5. I didn't love every single story, but the ones I did love like really stuck with me. And I just think that the writing was incredible. The themes of family were so well explored. Like, I really felt for the characters, even though they were short stories. And I think that if you like short story collections, this is a good one to get into. The audiobook is really, really pleasant to listen to, and it'll just do for a great time. By the way, I'm kind of going through chronological order that I read this in, not really favorites. So these are just like throughout the year, the books that I read that really stood out to me. And next up, we have City of Thieves by David Benioff. This is a really short book that I picked up from my library that I had heard from Noelle Gallagher. She really, really loves this book, and I wanted to give it a try. It's about World War II, but specifically in Russia, and it's about these two men that meet because they are arrested by the Nazis, and they are saved from being executed if they fulfill this mission that is to pick up a dozen eggs. This is specifically difficult because Russia is going through a winter, a very, very tough winter. And not just that, they are going through war, right? So there's not a lot of food. There's actually a lot of famine in Russia at the moment. So picking up a dozen eggs is practically impossible. But of course, between that and death, they choose to try and fulfill this adventure. They become friends. They didn't know each other previously. And it's just about that. So it's like this really, really different way of looking at World War II. And it has its funny moments sometimes. It has its amusing moments. Like, the characters have really good chemistry. They're like young men during this war trying to find themselves salvation, right? And try not to lose their, I don't know, their young selves. Like, they're trying not to lose what makes them like young men. And I don't know, I really loved it, but there's also so many difficult moments to read. It is so upsetting at times. It is so violent. and it's just a perfect mixture of both of them. I love the writing. I do want to purchase a copy for myself because I do want to reread it, and I just thought it was great. I just had a great time with it, even though it was really sad sometimes, but overall I had a great time and I definitely recommend it. Then we have a fantasy series that I've been meaning to start for a long time, and I finally took the jump around June, I think, and that is the 5th season. And then I read The Obelisk Gate by N.K. Jemisin. So this is a fantasy series by the award-winning writer N.K. Jemisin, and this is a book that is about this world where there is sometimes a 5th season, which is like basically a season that just destroys everything that has been previously constructed. It's a very destructive time. It is very, very difficult, and it's this world that is just going through the cycles, and we followed 3 different perspectives, which was really, really interesting. And when you start the book, you're like, how are these people connected? What are they doing? Because the perspectives are so unbelievably different. They are in completely different places in their life, but it just, oh my god, it is so masterfully written. I simply cannot believe it. And it was so difficult to start because one of the perspectives is in second person, which is a little bit difficult to get used to, but the feeling is always there. And when you actually do get into this world, it is absolutely amazing. I read The Obelisk Gate right after. I still need to read The Stone Sky, which is the finale to the trilogy. But I really, really love this book. So it was probably one of my favorite fantasy books that I read in 2023. I'm so happy that I finally read this. The series is absolutely incredible. I think it's one of the only series that has ever won the Hugo Award for each book. Just amazing. I did like the 5th season more than I did like The Obelisk Gates. The Obelisk Gates suffered a little bit from second book syndrome, but it was still really, really interesting and so well done. You have to read the series if you haven't. If you're like me and you haven't, you need to get to it. Next up, we have Babel, an arcane history by R.F. Kuang. I am kind of a year late into this. This was everyone's favorite in 2022, but I finally read it in 2023, and I'm so excited that I finally did. This is nothing new to all of you. We all know that Babel is about this translation institutes in Oxford, and it's about this young boy, Robin, who is taken away from his family in Canton, and he's taken to Oxford to learn translation and silver working, which is like the magic that is attached to the translation practices in the Tower of Babel. And it's this very exclusive and elite society, and basically he meets there other people that have to choose between being loyal to the British Empire or to rebel, you know. And it's very, very difficult, and it has a lot of difficult subjects approached, and the passion that R.F. Kuang has for the subject, the ties between translation and the perpetuation of imperialism, is something that I had never thought about, which is absolutely wild. That is something so, not really obvious, but it's something so just big and that I had never thought of. So I'm really, really thankful that I read this book. Some people say it lacks a little subtlety. I say that it doesn't. Like, it's a book about that, and you know it's going to be a book about that. I could have gotten a little bit more about personal relationships in this book, but really it's a book about imperialism, colonialism, and language. And if you like any of those things, if you're interested in any of those things, then you just know this is going to be a banger. Everyone loves this book. I'm telling you nothing new. So if you haven't checked it out, please do. It is amazing. Next up, we have a memoir, an autobiography, and everything in between, and that is To Be Young, Gifted, and Black by Lorraine Hansberry. I have talked about this book in my all-time favorite books, I think, so I'm not going to talk about it for too long here. But this is a book that is a collection of journal entries, letters written, excerpts of plays, because Lorraine Hansberry was a very acclaimed playwright in New York in the, I want to say 50s, 60s. I'm totally blanking out on this. But she was friends with James Baldwin, and she wrote this amazing play that I have to read that is called A Raisin in the Sun, and it was like a hit on Broadway. And unfortunately, Lorraine Hansberry passed away quite young from a terminal illness. It is so upsetting to know that such a bright mind was taken so young. But this book was just incredible. I saw it at my university's library, like very randomly. Like I just saw it on the shelf and the title just really called out to me, and then I ended up reading it, and it was just a wonderful collection of just thoughts by Lauren Hansberry, and I don't know, I just really connected with it. I loved it, and I think that this is an amazing artist that we lost too soon, and a lot of people don't know who she is, like I didn't know. And so if you like memoirs, autobiographies, and all that in between, you need to read this book because it really touched me. All right, only 3 to go, and the next one is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. This is a book that I wasn't really expecting to love. I went into it knowing absolutely nothing, or rather I thought I knew what this book was about, and I ended up being completely wrong. This book is about our main character Piranesi, who doesn't really know his real name, and he's in this huge labyrinth full of rooms and vestibules and corridors, and he has no idea where he is, but he keeps his journals with him to just talk about where he's been, what he's eating, just to write everything down that he does and what he visits, so he can keep track of how big this manor is. And there's this other man who he calls the Other, who is in search of this secret knowledge, as he calls it. So it's about their friendship, or is it a friendship, in this really weird place. And then another person comes into the labyrinth, which has never happened before, and it's about the dynamic that ensues. And honestly, what really captured my heart was actually Piranesi, like his personality, who he was, his thoughts. It was just so, he was so pure, like what a kind-hearted soul. And it's a little bit difficult to get into at first, but it is well worth it. It is beautifully written, it is a short book, and I love the message at the end. It is just, it has stuck with me for a long time. I really loved Piranesi. Then the last 2 spots here are 2 classics. One of them is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. Of course, I finally read To Kill a Mockingbird in 2023, and it was absolutely amazing. I really loved it. It wasn't like an all-time favorite, but it has really stuck with me. I love specifically the writing of this, and I know everyone knows what To Kill a Mockingbird is about, so I'm not going to get really into that. But I know that the thing that most people appreciate is obviously the conversation around racism and around injustice, specifically in the South during the 30s. But what really stuck with me was also the descriptions, like the writing that Harper Lee does, and the way that she can converse with the reader through the eyes of a child. It was just amazing to see. Like, it really got me thinking about my own childhood and the way that I saw things when I was younger. And I thought that that was one of the most amazing things, because I usually don't love when books have children's perspectives. I don't usually love that, but in this specific case, there was just something about it that really stuck with me. I just loved seeing the world through Scout's eyes, and obviously all of the other aspects were great as well, but that one was just what really stuck with me throughout the year. And yeah, it's a classic for a reason. You know, I'm not telling you anything new. It's a classic for a reason. It's a really great book. I really like the sequel as well, which I know is controversial, but I really like the sequel for reasons. And yeah, it was just a great book, and I'm so happy that I finally read it. And also 2024 will be my year of classics, because I really want to get into a lot of classics that I haven't read before. And it's mostly because of the final book that we're going to talk about. Also one of my favorite books of the year, and that is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Guys, I read this book for an English literature class, and I'm so thankful that I did. I wasn't really sure what Jane Eyre was actually about, and it's about this young woman, Jane Eyre, that is a dependent. She grows up as an orphan in this house with her aunt that does not like her, that mistreats her, and then when she grows up, she goes to this school that is also very negative, very religious, very brutal. And then when she turns 18, she goes to be a governante in this man's house, Mr. Rochester. And let me just tell you, if I ever see Mr. Rochester in the streets, it's on sight, sir. I hate this man. so fucking bad. He is one of the worst characters in English literature ever. But anyway, I love this book because it is a perfect mixture of gothic, and it's written as an autobiography. So like Jane Eyre is writing this, and it feels so unbelievably more modern. Like this could have been written 50 years ago and I would have believed it, like obviously with historical adjustments, but in terms of the writing style, the mind of our main character, it just felt unbelievably modern, and I really, really appreciated that. I thought it was so much fun. I had a blast reading this. Like it was so quote worthy. The writing, absolutely amazing. I have never marked this up so bad in my life. Like Charlotte Bronte really ate this up. I am in awe of her. I want to be her friend. And this is one of my favorite books of 2023. For sure, like, what a classic. So yeah, these are some of my favorite reads of the year and also some of my worst books of the year. As we've mentioned, 2022 was just a very meh reading year. There were a lot of middle of the road books that I don't remember, that I didn't really enjoy, but I also didn't hate. And we are going to make a lot of changes in 2024. I'm going to be more picky with the books that I do pick out. I'm going to try my hardest to read according to my own taste and what I think I'll enjoy. And hopefully we'll have better luck this year because I need new favorites. I need new favorites. This was just such a meh reading year. I can't do this again in 2024. And I also hope that you have an amazing reading year. As I said previously, I hope that it's filled with amazing books and that just overall you have a great time in 2024. As always, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more bookish content. And I'll see you in my next video. I hope you have a nice day, and I'll remember that life is worth reading.